Hello and welcome. My name is Philippa Haynes.
And I'm Mark Lee. Welcome to another episode of the Accountant's Success Secrets podcast. This is where we showcase and celebrate the successful accountants who've been running their own practice for a good few years and whose stories can inspire and encourage other accountants around the UK.
Yeah, we asked them to share their story, including the highs, the lows, and what they've learned on the way. Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener. So if you would like to share your story in a similar way, do please get in touch with Mark or myself.
Yeah, our podcast today is supported by the Tax Advice Network. Their website exists to enable you to find exactly the right tax specialist whenever a client's tax issue, challenge or problem demands a second opinion, or when you want to avoid going beyond your level of competence and experience. It costs nothing to use the website, where you'll find tax experts addressing over 100 areas of tax. Just choose the advisor you want and contact them directly through the website. Simply visit taxadvicenetwork.co.uk to find out more.
Thank you. So today on our podcast, we are absolutely delighted to introduce Paul Donno of One Accounts Online Limited, an accountancy firm he set up just over 10 years ago. Now, Paul loves to help businesses to start up and is an industry leader in online accounting and pioneering digital-first accounting practices. He has grown his team to 16 people, including his daughters, now son-in-law, wife, and Betsy, the Cavapuchon, all providing vital roles within the business. His daughter Jade, who runs the practice, isn't an accountant. And we'll find out more about that because she's brought some valuable insight into the business. Paul has won many awards, of which the most recent is West Suffolk Business Leader of the Year 23-24.
Welcome, Paul, and congrats on that award and the others as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add by way of introduction?
Hi Mark, hi Philippa. Thanks for inviting me. I could spend forever talking about myself and the awards, etc. over the years. And I think, Mark, we first met when we won the Practice Excellence Awards for New Practice about 8 years ago, I think now. Wow. So I will leave it at that, I think.
Okay. Yeah, there have been a lot. There's at least 6 that I saw on your profile.
Very impressive. Well, as you know, we aim to keep the podcast to around 30 minutes, and we do that by focusing the discussion around a few key questions. And I'll start with a combination question. What attracted you to start your own practice, and how did you go about doing it?
Crikey, I started my own practice many, many years ago. The attraction was I like helping businesses. I don't like taking instructions from most people. So I just felt that there was some entrepreneurial spirit within me that wanted to move forward. All those years ago, it was a traditional firm. And then 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to sell that firm, and then basically set up brand new online only. And I could see the new world coming online. We were Sage's first online accountants in terms of their Sage 1 product, which was fairly ropey at the time. We championed that and moved it forward. And work very closely with Sage on that side of it. And so we've never looked back on that type of client. So we always go online now. Any of our clients have got to use online software.
Yeah. So when you say traditional, I mean, you mean face-to-face, do you, and paper-based?
I mean paper-based. I mean timesheet-based. We don't use timesheets at all. So yeah, we are completely fixed fee and value priced. So I wanted to get away from that. All you end up doing with timesheets is beating your team members over the head for not hitting it and making up the timesheet. So we just didn't want to do that anymore. We don't have paper. Funny enough, we had a document storage guy in today as one of our clients complaining that we don't store anything with him. And I said, well, we don't have paper. So that was quite funny. So that's what I mean by traditional. So we're not, if someone comes in, they know where they stand with us, certainly on pricing and what we're going to deliver.
And when you started this practice, Paul, did you take clients from the old practice that you sold, or did you have to start completely from scratch?
I think I had about 8 or 10 that I moved over, which were mainly friends and family. But apart from that, it was from scratch. Yeah.
And
I
how
was
did you?
working in my bedroom at home. So it was just me on the computer. My wife was doing payroll, and she was absolutely useless at that. So she kept away from accounts from there. She knows she was. So we had a good laugh about that.
And how did you generate those first clients? Then beyond that, in order to build up
So bear in mind that was 10 years ago. So the internet, whilst it existed, obviously because we're doing online, social media was not very prevalent, and accountants did not really appear on it. So we were very heavy on social media, very heavy on video, which my daughter Jade, she would have been about 19 at that point. She did a lot of the video editing and etc. for us. So we promoted ourselves heavily on social media, and I became chairman of the local Chamber of Commerce and networked really, really hard. and that's how we generated the work.
That's brilliant. And just before I pass over to Philippa, just to follow up on all that, when you say social media, any particular platforms or across a range of platforms, or LinkedIn distinct?
So LinkedIn, I found markets to accountants. So that didn't really work for us from a work point of view. So in terms of social, absolutely, but social media at the time was a little bit of Twitter and Facebook. Things like Instagram, etc., or Insta as they call it now. That type of thing wasn't really around at the time. A little bit of YouTube as well, but not a great deal.
Yeah, great. I mean, I have the sort of next question of, what have you learned? But it sounds to me like there's a question around, so you sold the traditional firm and then you set up. Do you remember why you did that, essentially? Because I know you said you're entrepreneurial and you don't like to take orders, so you're a natural kind of business owner. But what was it that started to get you into doing different things, new things, and be right at the head of the curve? Can you remember?
I've always been that way inclined. I had a really, really good relationship with Sage. We were doing a lot of stuff, particularly when they came to the market for online. So I did a lot of talks around the world for them as well. So I really understood the product and I understood the concept of it. But like everyone else that's an early adopter, there was a lot of pitfalls that went along with that as well. So we had to work around them, and I think I suppose it's how you deal with those issues that help a lot.
Yeah. So what were they? Because what have you learned then? What were the pitfalls? Because actually you're an early adopter, but there are still others who are only just coming through to that. So what would you say to them?
Most of the time the clients don't quite understand technology. So it's a lot of it. I think the big side of it from our point of view was the training is still, even though it's online and even though software companies will lead us to believe that it's easy to use, it is easy to use, but you still need the training and guidance. And I think once we realize if you put that effort in, the end product is a lot better and a lot smoother. And also we have now a product whereby we look at the people's accounts every 3 months just to keep it on track.
Yeah, great. So it's that consistent kind of tracking of where people are going and also, being able to have those future facing conversations then.
Absolutely. Yeah, indeed.
Great stuff.
So
what else have you learned along the way then? Because obviously it's a big journey there. We talked before the interview about your practice management software and how you've actually grown significantly as a result of that. What are the things that you've learned then?
I think one of the big things I learned when I had my traditional practice was we used timesheets, so we had a lot of lock up in work in progress, and we spent ages and a lot of money chasing debt. So the first thing I said I would do in this practice is not have any debt. And I think my debtor days are 7 days at the moment. We don't have anyone owe us any money. Everything is paid for up front, and everything is on a monthly fixed fee. And in particular, year-end accounts are, as a minimum, have 6 months already paid for up front before we do anything. So that side of the equation is gone, which is great. And we have very little problems around that area. And everything is automated as well. So we're not spending time and money on admin. But the big thing to enable us to grow from a sort of static level, as it were, which was about 250, 300 turnover, where I could manage it myself, was process. And that's where Jade, my eldest daughter, came in, put a practice management solution in. We used Carbon. And basically, she spent at least 6 months dealing with that. Because she wasn't an accountant, she asked the daft questions of accountants to draw it out of the accountants that know everything, apparently. And so she's managed that process. So our processes are very, very simple to follow.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds to me like Jade is obviously, a very different type of person with a very different profile based on experience. But she's actually brought something unique to the business, which I think is a very good learning for anybody else thinking about recruitment and who they want to bring in. So tell us a little bit about Jade and what she's brought.
Well, Jade, obviously being a business owner, I'm quite difficult to control. So initially when Jade come on board, first thing she did was complain to my wife, and that got sorted. So I had attack from all angles. And I think I'm the one that broke every single process and was kicking and screaming until I could see it worked. But because she has got her musical theatre background, she's very much, she laughs at me. I always call her, she's a lovey. But her social media presence, I mean, we've got What Business with the Donnos as a social media channel now. That social media presence is something she really, really champions as well. And she does a lot around that. So our profile goes through the roof because, Jade and my youngest daughter, Katie, promote the business really, really heavily out there.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And what could you give us a rough idea of the sort of client base, the type of clients that you act for, Paul?
Yeah, we deal with a lot of micro and small limited companies. We don't really target sole traders. We've done some testing for making tax digital, and that is just going to be a minefield because of training sole traders. If they can't get it right using our service, it's going to be hard moving forward. Our sweet spot is sort of the 500 to 3 million business, where we can help them to grow using forecasting tools, etc., that just link into the online software now.
Yeah, and how does that work with the Insta then? Because obviously with social media, there are different profiles of people sort of following different channels, aren't there? So how does the Insta work with, and the videos and all of that your daughters are doing? Obviously well.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. There's different age groups use different products.
Yes.
TikTok was my biggest surprise. Because I don't understand TikTok. And the last time I looked at TikTok, I think I watched some lady, and I don't know why I watched it, unpacking her shopping from Aldi's. And I just don't know why I got drawn into it. So I don't understand it at all. But what it has done, it's helped with recruitment. So it wasn't necessarily, we've not necessarily got clients from it, but we have got team members from it, particularly the younger ones. Who actually want to work for us because of our TikTok. And that was a bizarre offshoot I was not expecting.
Well, it's funny you say that, because it's something I've long said to accountants. It's worth being active on the platforms where your target clients are, but keep in mind what your objective is. And if you're struggling to recruit, as most are, and you're looking to recruit younger people, then different social media platforms, including TikTok, can be a route to finding younger people who get excited at the idea of going to work for an accountant that's active on their platform of choice.
Yeah.
Work against you as well, because they might not want to work for an accountant who's going to appear in their social media feeds. So there's no guarantees on any of this. But it doesn't surprise me that that worked for you at all.
Yeah, and on the recruitment front, we've actually this last 6 months actually set up a waiting list for people that want to work for us, because again, you know, more often than not, we take people on because they're the only people that apply at that time. So Jade's now actually got a waiting list of people that actually want to work here. And locally, you know, as an employer locally, we're very open. The place is really open plan, really modern. We've got pool tables, football tables, coffee machines, the lot. So, you know, we hope we're a good employer and good to work for.
That is really awesome, because I think it's on the spectrum. It seems like you've either got a waiting list or you can't find anybody, you know, and you're really struggling to recruit. So obviously there's the TikTok, there's the kind of being present locally. What else do you think? Is it your daughters, just what they're doing? What do you think the magic, the secret is? There you go. That's the title of the podcast, isn't it? Yeah.
It's keep on doing it. You know, the amount of people I speak to, we actually mentor a young lad who's got a new practicing certificate locally, who we give our smaller stuff to, and we really help him out. But I find it very bizarre that people want to grow a business that don't want to promote it. And I just don't get it, you know, and we are constantly on there. And you often hear it, and I'm sure you guys have heard it, where people sort of say, well, we don't know what to put on it. Well, you mentioned Betsy. Well, Betsy's our Cavapuchon, and she's, you know, an office dog. So we put her on it. You know, we get probably more likes and conversations about Betsy or Honey, which is Katie's dog, than anything else.
Yeah, it's the simple things, isn't it?
Yeah. So moving on, Paul, we've talked about some of the successes and things you've learned. What about mistakes that you've made and what you learned from them and correcting them?
I think we never talk about our mistakes, do we? But yeah, there have been many, particularly around recruitment. So, and I think what I learned from them quickly, and certainly it was a big learning curve for Jade, is you fire quick. You know, if they're not working out, you get rid of them quick, because the more you try and let that drag out, the more it doesn't work. So I think recruitment's a biggie. Software, you know, I've been calmed down a lot. I don't go after the big shiny new objects anymore. We develop what we've got. The amount of people I hear who say that, you know, they're now moving their entire database to another software because it's that good. And then, you know, 4 months later, it's not quite that good, and you've spent all that time. So yeah, we don't chop and change a lot. We try and use what we've got. We're always looking for new ideas and new assistants, but we're not quite as quick as what we used to be.
I think that's very wise. Just going back to the recruitment side of things, what changes have you made when it comes to recruiting people to avoid repeating the same recruitment mistakes?
Yeah, you probably laugh at this. I don't get involved with any recruitment at all. I don't get involved with the interviews, etc. And normally the time I know that they're arriving is when they arrive. My wife's a wellness coach, so she will get involved with the, you know, I've got a psychology degree as well, so she'll get involved with that process with Jade, and they will do it. You know, because a lot of it's about attitudes. You know, everyone's got the qualifications. It's the attitude that will fit in with our business.
Yeah.
So what was the change? What was the change you made then? Was it taking you out of the process?
Literally take me out of the process. Yeah.
And why is that? Is there a reason for that? Are you just a bad you know, you're not good at sort of getting the personality right, or you just?
I think that, you know, if someone comes in and they like golf and rugby, they've almost automatically got a job. You know,
and cars, I hear cars.
Yeah, and cars. So, you know, that's great. I don't care about anything else. So they kind of take that out of the equation, really, to be honest.
That is wonderful, and thank you for being honest about that. You're certainly not the only accountant I've spoken to who's had to learn that either they need to have somebody else, if practice is big enough, you can have other people doing it, or you've got to really have a process to make sure you cover the key elements. And as you say, recruiting for attitude, because you can teach the technical stuff, they can learn the technical stuff, but by the time people are coming into the job market, and particularly if they're changing jobs, they haven't got the right attitude, it's much more challenging.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing I'm interested in is, obviously, if TikTok is working for recruitment, and that's brilliant, and you've got a waiting list, which seems to work very well for a lot of firms, how do you actually manage when they're there? Because obviously the day-to-day of an accounting practice is kind of different than the TikTok life, isn't it? I mean, do you do a lot of what do you do in terms of bringing people on, development, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so the development side is quite interesting. When I sort of run practice, and effectively I was the main contact for clients, etc. As you grow, you lose that contact. So what we did is we sat back and thought, well, what's going on? Clients are saying we don't know who to talk to. So what we've now done is we've got a pod system, basically. There's 4 or 5 people in a pod, and the client goes to that pod. And then that way there's a pod leader. That's the main person they speak to. So effectively, again, I'm not in that scenario anymore. So it takes me out of the equation, which is really, really important to develop the business. Because the more I do in the business, the less I can do actually working on it and promoting it and moving it forward.
Yeah.
And that's helped a lot.
Yeah. So one of the things, I mean, we talked about both on air and off is, your family and it being a family business. And there are obviously lots of families, and certainly it seems within accounting. What does that bring to the party, do you think, as a family business?
I think that brings a lot, to be honest. So as a family business, we're a very close family. So we don't just talk about work outside of work as well. So we are a very close family. Because of that, we obviously have our family values. So the whole business has a set of values that it runs by. They're all on our office walls outside as well. And they're very much about, put yourself in the client's shoes. What does a client want? How do we work that? And we install that with the team. The team came up with the values. So at the end of the day, they own the values. It's not dictated by us. So we go back to it, and at least once a month we go around the table in here, actually, and say, what value have you applied this month? And we really, really work on that really hard on that.
That's brilliant. I mean, because I think it's one thing to have values and actually another to implement them and keep them alive. And I was going to ask you what you actually do for that. So it's a monthly meeting, and then I'm assuming that as a pod system, people keep them alive in some way, shape or form like that?
Yeah, so the pods meet once a week, just to look at their workflow and where everything's sitting. But yes, and then once a month as a whole firm, as it were, we go through and make sure everyone's aligned with those values as well.
So they're much more than just words on the wall.
Absolutely. No, indeed. Because we often forget that telling someone they got an X amount tax bill could be quite devastating. And, you've got to be working properly with people and going there.
It's so true. I think we've sort of covered what singles your practice out in many ways, attracting new clients and keeping those you have. And what any other secrets to your success? We've had the values, we've got the family business, we've got the practice management system, no timesheets. You have flexi working, people working from home at all?
Yep. So we work a 3-2. So basically 2 in the office, 3 at home. That's the options they've got. So to be honest, quite a lot of people work more in the office because we've got a really nice environment as well, so that works well. And in the summer we've got aircon, so that helps.
Yeah. And with young people, not everybody lives somewhere where they can comfortably work from home. We sometimes forget that.
Yeah, and we did that came to roost during COVID, because we did have a young person whose family members all worked at home, and they decided to do DIY for 2 years, and he just couldn't work. So he did spend all the time in the office. So you do forget about that, and yeah, so that the opportunity is there for them to work here as well. So yeah.
And the other quick question to ask you, because it's a challenge that I often hear when accountants can't imagine doing away with timesheets, particularly when they've got 16, 17 members of the team, as you have, is how do you know people, how do you keep track of what people are doing and what fees you should be charging clients and when clients should be charged more? How do you deal with those issues?
Yeah, I find that a really strange question for accountants who are business owners and supposed to understand business. Yes, some clients might get a better deal than others.
Yeah,
that might happen. But my bottom line is where I'm really worried, and that works well. So we fixed our fees where we need them. We have extras lists like changing directors, etc. That's been a challenge with the change in pricing of Companies House. So we've done that. We always charge for the online software separately because they typically put their prices every year now by 10%, which is frustrating. And then the value pricing, I've got a lot of experience of what time is needed as well. But equally, why should our team have so many years experience to fix something quickly, and it's a really high value to someone? So there's charge what the job is worth, not necessarily the time you spend on it.
Fantastic. So true. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as always, it goes really quickly, the 30 minutes. But just finally, one of the things I was quite interested in hearing about was your magpie tendencies and how you've managed to remove those, and particularly sort of work with the software that you have, because I think these days the sector, the space is so dynamic that people are just overwhelmed with all kinds of software and all kinds of new products, and the temptation to kind of go all over the place is kind of real. I mean, what would you say to people based on your experience of just sticking with it?
I would say review regularly on software, because you often forget that people will develop bits of software you're already using that are then overlapping with bits of software you're already paying for. We took out, I think, £18,000 2 years ago from our software costs because of overlap.
Wow.
And we haven't, bear in mind, we spend a lot of money on software. We haven't missed that bit of two bits of software out of our equation.
So how did you do that? What was the review process? You just sat down, was it you or the team just looking at what they're using every day?
I mean, I budget and forecast regularly. I look at things on a regular basis. When you start looking at the pattern and then what you're spending as a percentage, and your software costs are colossal, you then need to look at what it's doing. And yeah, I had two bits of software that basically were doing the same as other bits, and I was paying handsomely for it.
Yeah, you're not unusual in that, finding yourself in that situation. A lot of the time, accountants go for something new and shiny because there's something wonderful in it, and they miss the fact that most of it overlaps with something they've already got that has facilities that they've not used before because they weren't well promoted by the developers because it was bought for some other reason.
Yeah, and the big three mains, obviously Sage, QuickBooks, Xero, actually have got a lot of reporting in there that, quite frankly, is not used for it. I mean, there are people say that haven't seen certain reports within those bits of software, and you think, really?
Yeah, great. I mean, that's sort of bringing us to an end. Kind of, for me, what I've really noticed is that lovely balance between being really entrepreneurial and dynamic and doing new things, Paul, you know, and TikTok and all of that good stuff, but also being pragmatic as well, and looking at the software and things that are working already, and understanding that sometimes removing yourself, i.e. Paul, from the equation is really important too. So that, I think that's a fantastic learning. But that brings us to the end, sadly. It's been fantastic to kind of hear a little bit more about the business. Obviously, you know, you're well known, but do you want to share just your contact details or how it's best to get in touch with either you or members of your team?
Yeah, so one account, I mean, by all means, have a look at our website, which is oneaccounts.co.uk. It's the number one. Our pricing's all on there as well. So if you want to have a look at that and where we are and what we do and what we offer, then by all means do that. And yeah, please link up on LinkedIn as well. And it's just my name. There's only one of me on there, I think. So that works as well.
Great.
Thank you very much, Paul. And Philippa, how can listeners find out more about you and Insight 101?
Well, I'm big on LinkedIn, or otherwise go to my website, www.insight101.co.uk, and you can find a way of booking a call or something like that with me. And Mark, what about your Soul Practice Club? How can listeners find out more?
Thank you very much, Philippa. Yes, online, I'm Bookmarkly. We're probably already connected on LinkedIn if you're listening to this. On my website, there's a page for the Soul Practice Club, online club monthly for soul practitioners, some of whom want to join the club, others perhaps feeling more isolated, frustrated and overwhelmed and don't want to share that with everybody, come to me for one-to-one mentoring. But it always starts with a conversation. So feel free to reach out. There's links to book a call with me at any time. And you can do both if you want to.
Great. Well, that's it. If you've enjoyed the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, please share the love online, subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or even YouTube. And let us have your feedback too.
Brilliant. It all helps to potentially broaden the reach of the podcast and the number of listeners that we have. So do please contact Philippa or myself if you would like to be interviewed in a future podcast. Many thanks again to Paul and to Philippa. Until next time on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast or anywhere else that we might meet online or in real life. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.